So Rafale is definitely the buzzword. Words of Air Marshal Nagesh Kapoor, Vice Chief of Air Staff. In fact, Air Marshal Kapoor described Rafale as one of the heroes of Operation Sindoor. The IAF squadron strength, incidentally, depleting from the sanctioned 37.5 squadrons, from the desired 42 squadrons, now down to just about 29, 30, 31 squadrons. That's the figure that Air Force sources tell India today. What does the Rafale acquisition plan actually mean for the Indian Air Force, for the Atmanirbhar Bharat and Defence project, and of course for the 5th generation fighter jet program, the AMCA program? I want to bring in our guests on this show: Air Marshal Sanjeev Kapoor, former Director General Flight Safety and Inspections; Colonel Ajay Shukla, a well-respected defence analyst; Sandeep Unnithan, senior journalist. But before I come to our guests, I quickly want to cut across and bring in our defence editor Shivani Sharma, joining us for more on this. Shivani, you've been speaking to your sources in the Indian Air Force, and we heard Air Marshal Nagesh Kapoor saying Rafale is one of the heroes, the sooner the better. What does the Rafale acquisition mean for them right now? When are they hoping that the first jets in flyaway condition will be in India?
Gaurav, the way things are moving, it seems that the MOD is also very quick. It is very quick in procurement of these Rafales, since we know that the 114 MRFA program has been in the pipeline for some time now. But Indian Air Force desperately needs new fighter jets. We've seen how the operational situation is emerging, especially after Operation Sindoor. So a lot of aggressive procurement is going on. And when it comes to 114 Rafales, we have already seen that on 15th of January, the Defence Procurement Board had given a nod. Now, the Defence Acquisition Council has already approved and given the approval for the AON. And through the sources, we know that since Emmanuel Macron would be in India between 17th and 19th, the things are moving quite fast. So the things are now being made quite quick, so that the Indian Air Force gets the 114 Rafale. In fact, the first squadron should fly in next 2 to 3 years. That
Okay.
is the aim. So we assume and we expect that very soon the Indian Air Force will get the first squadron of this particular deal that is to be cracked.
Shivani, for the moment, many thanks for joining me. Air Marshal Kapoor, 18 in flyaway condition, the rest to be assembled in India, then made in India. Explain what this means for the IAF with squadron strength now down to about 30 squadrons, sir.
Good evening to you and the fellow panelists. The inductions of LCA Mark 1 also is not complete. They were to join the Indian Air Force by 2016. Two are still pending. The others, LCA Mark 1 Alphas, were to come into service by 2018 and were to be operationalized by 2021 as per the original program. We are in 2026, they have still not joined the service. So there could be many factors, engines, sensor integration, certification issues. You can, endlessly go on. So though the 5 are ready, but it still lacks the key components of which the Air Force has said that you first fulfill and then we. Now, as you covered, there is a massive shortfall that is going on in the squadron strength, and both adversaries, north and west, and also the threats which are looming around in the neighborhood, entails Indian Air Force to be absolutely ready. Now, the MRFA evaluations that were done in 2007 to 11, and we did G2G in 2016, the India of 2026 is much different than India of 2016. So, if you see what has happened in the last few months, we have got the M88 Safran MRO here in India. The Tatas and the adjacent setup is making the fuselage for Rafale. There are large number of companies which are MSMEs and the other startups which are integrating their components into Rafale. Rafale order book has crossed more than 600, and they are looking to shift out of Bordeaux because they need a final assembly line somewhere. So the most convenient place in all this is coming to Indian, though nothing has been said as yet, but it is one of the options for the company to set it up here. On the other hand, the negotiations which will go, plus interoperability with the Navy, the training, the simulators,
Fair enough.
tactics. So it falls into place to meet the shortfall and
Now,
to
if it falls into place, Sandeep, how is this agreement different from the one that was scrapped earlier? There are critics who say there's been loss of time, there's been loss of money. Is the New Deal materially different from the one that was either scrapped or not taken through to its logical conclusion?
Well, absolutely, Gaurav. This new deal seems to be different from the previous one, and I'll just explain very quickly why. One is, of course, the three big takeaways from this deal is that one is that India signaling that France is its strategic partner of choice. It's not just for the fighter jets, but also for the engine, as Air Marshal Kapoor mentioned. Yes. The second big takeaway is, of course, the dipping squadron strength. You're looking at an air force which is one of the smallest Indian air forces possibly since the 1962 war, less than 30 squadrons, as you mentioned. And the third big takeaway, Gaurav, is that this possibly represents India setting up a second fighter production line outside of HAL. Now, HAL has done the Su-30s, it's building the LCA Mark 1 and the Mark 1 Alpha, and then go on to the Mark 2. HAL has plenty of orders. The government seems to be indicating that it wants to create a second production line, which possibly will be set up in the DRAL at Nagpur, the Dassault Reliance line in Nagpur. That is possibly where these Rafales, the 90-odd Rafales that we are talking of, will be assembled there. The first deal, the original MMRCA deal, spoke about assembling these aircraft in HAL, and there was an issue over the certification of the final aircraft. Dassault said that they would not certify those aircraft built by HAL, and that's why one of the reasons why that deal fell through. But here you're looking at Dassault taking over with a private sector player that could possibly be the Tata Group, which has experience in building wings and fuselage parts. So this is very different from the previous deal
very
in terms
different
of
from the previous deal.
Yes.
But has there been, Colonel Shukla, loss of time? How do you view this in terms of, finally inking it now ahead of the French president's visit to India? Should this process, I mean, we've been talking about this from 2010, 11, then 16, 17, and now finally 2026. Should it have been done earlier, or that deal was very different from the one that's being inked now?
A very good evening to all of you. I think you're absolutely on the button on this, Gaurav. There are many questions to be asked over how the deal is being concluded and whether it should have been done earlier. The fact of the matter is that we already operate 7 types of fighter aircraft. If you continue to count the MiG-21, which is now on its last way out. You have all those different types of aircraft with numerous logistical problems that arise just from the sheer numbers that we're talking about. I think that what is really needed is for the Air Force and the MOD to take a step back, take a larger, longer-term view of what is worth keeping, what is worth getting rid of. Aircraft like the Jaguar, aircraft like the Mirage 2000 is still got some service in it, but there really is a need to evaluate some of the aircraft that we have. And at the same time, and lastly, I think that the Tejas and the Tejas Mark 1 Alpha, then going on to Tejas Mark 2, this is perforce the aircraft of the future. There continue to be, I am the first to admit it, problems in the way that it's being handled by HAL. But I think that there is a future in that, and there's a future in looking inwards at what we can build within our own resources. So I think these are some of the things that need to be done.
Air Marshal Kapoor reports say China has more 5th-generation J-20 fighter jets deployed in their Western Theater Command against India than the entire fighter strength of the Indian Air Force here. Our procurement of this 4.5-generation aircraft, it'll take time to come from the inking of the deal to the time that the first squadron finally comes in, to the time that you have all the aircraft in. Does that keep us vulnerable in the air? Not just perhaps, Pakistan we can deal with, but vis-a-vis China.
Absolutely. I have spoken on large forums and many places. The pace at which the infrastructure is coming up in Western China and the Tibet area, the number of airfields, the helipads, their storage dumps, their hardened shelters, their missile sites, all these are coming up at such a rapid pace, including laying out of railway lines east to west, highways, and integrating it to all the nerve centers. Now, this is a case of worry for us. And I also read this report wherein it says the Western sector has more aeroplanes, and the elephant march picture that was moving around on
Yes.
social media since yesterday highlights this thing. But let's take it with a pinch of salt. The Chinese way of doing things is more for pomp and show off. The military parades, their ceremonial parades, is more for the global audience. Their tactics and the movements around the South China Sea or Taiwan or these areas are for global audience. And these pictures are also selectively released at a time when they know that India is watching and the strength is depleting.
Okay.
Yes, their numbers are their equipments are much superior than what we have. Their indigenization and other capabilities are far, far ahead of us. But I always say, in the end, it is the man behind the machine, in my opinion, that counts more than the machine itself. And we have seen it in all the wars, be it 62,
Okay.
65, 71, Kargil. The capability of Indian people to operate these machines, which have already been phased out globally, is something which I'm very confident of our training, our adaptability, our integration, our taking the components of 70s and 80s and integrating it with the platforms as new as Rafales is
No, in
something
fact,
which
even in
is
Operation Sindoor, we saw how the Second World War Zu-23 guns and L-70s were integrated with the latest integrated air defense system, and how India did much better than Pakistan. But if I may, and stay on the subject of Rafale for a moment, Sandeep, going in for this 4.5 generation aircraft and this 3.25 lakh crore rupee deal, will this adversely impact our quest for a 5th generation aircraft? Is this the best way forward, the Made in India AMCA? And does this mean that we are no longer looking at maybe 2 squadrons of Su-57s or any other aircraft?
Well, Gaurav, very clearly we are looking for the 5th generation fighter aircraft from Russia, probably 2 or 3 squadrons. That's still on the table, but there are issues with whether Russians can supply it in time. But the Rafale deal has to be seen in terms of the aircraft that it will replace. It's not just about replacing the aircraft that you've already retired. It's about the aircraft that you will replace over the next decade. As Colonel Shukla mentioned, that you have the Jaguars, you have the Mirages, which are over 4 decades old. The Rafale is being pushed by the Indian Air Force as a replacement for those platforms, the Mirages, the Jaguars, simply because it is a multi-role aircraft. It can be used for deep penetration strike, it can be used for air dominance, nuclear deterrence, long-range maritime strike. It has a phenomenal capabilities. It's got a radius of about 1,800 kilometers. It can carry 10 tons of weapons on 14 hard points. 10 tons, to give you an idea, Gaurav, is 2 MiG-21s. It can carry 2 MiG-21s under its wings. That's the capability of this aircraft. Now, coming to the point about taking away from indigenous fighter aircraft program, there is no way forward but for us to invest in the AMCA, in the LCA Tejas Mark II. All of these are building blocks for our own Atmanirbhar fighter ecosystem. But clearly the Air Force has said, look, we need these aircraft for the short term, because as the Air Chief AP Singh mentioned recently, that the Indian Air Force needs something like 35 to 40 fighter jets every year. Yeah. China is adding on 150 odd aircraft a year. The Indian Air Force, the bare minimum we need is about 40 aircraft. That's a little over 2 squadrons. And the idea is that you get some aircraft from HAL and you get the rest from this production line that you're going to set up.
The second production
the 2 production lines for fighter jets. Yes.
Okay, Colonel Shukla, would a deal which is one being called the mother of all defense deals, 3.25 lakh crore, going in for these aircraft, which may have perhaps initially limited transfer of technology, limited indigenization, would that adversely impact India's indigenization program, the fifth generation aircraft, or this is the need of the hour? There is no way, there's no other way as of now to go about it.
Gaurav, there has to be a certain amount of cooperation between aircraft that are being bought from overseas, aircraft that are being built at the initial stages, aircraft for whom we are only looking at the technology so far, like the AMCA and so on. And all of these have a valid and legitimate place in the arming of an air force. So I think I would just answer your question very briefly by saying we have to deal with all of them. We have to have a sort of a more cooperative arrangement between the Indian Air Force and HAL. Both of them have sort of some things to learn from, some things that they still need to get off the ground on. But this is, it's, I think, very encouraging that we have got a series of aircraft now for the present, aircraft like the Rafale. And at the same time, we are continuing to make headway on the futuristic programs like AMCA and so on. So, I mean, I think that's the way to go. I'm sure the Air Marshal would sort of have something to say on this. Let's keep our fingers crossed on it.
In fact, Air Marshal Kapoor, that's the question I was coming to. That last time there was an issue with certification of HAL, the proposed HAL manufactured Rafale and the timelines on that. So given that reports say 18 aircraft will come in a flyaway condition, the rest through licensed production in India, how confident are you, sir, that the domestic assembly line, one, will be able to keep pace, two, not dilute what is extremely critical is quality control and safety standards, where sadly in the past there have been instances that HAL has been found wanting, that there is accountability and when required, the ability to ramp up?
HAL has a wonderful layout. Over the decades, they have one of the finest layouts to manufacture an aeroplane anywhere in this part of the world. Now, the problems are two, in my opinion. One is the project management, and second is the accountability. The timelines, like I just covered, have been slipping from the day one.
Yes.
There is some reason or the other. So there is an inherent flaw in the system wherein everybody, starting from the manufacturer to designer to provider to the user, comes under one ministry. So there is a need, I feel, to put some parts away and under different verticals. This is one suggestion. Second, the turning point, which has come a few days ago, is selection of prototype manufacturing, the shortlisted of 3 private companies, that is the Tatas, Bharat Forge, and L&T. Now, this conveys a singular message that HAL has enough on its plate. And of all the listed things with which the selection was to be done, I was reading that the ratio set was 1:3. Means whatever is the annual revenue, you should have, the demands not more than thrice. But
Okay.
HAL has 1:8.
Yes.
HAL has 1:8. It means all what they produce in 1 year, they have an order book of 8 times more than that pending. That includes upgradation of 200 Su-30s. That includes, production of LCA, Mark 1 Alpha, Mark 2, helicopters, HTT, you name
Yes.
endless upgrades of Dorniers, Jaguars. So the plate is already full. So now the government has done is that the prototypes, but mind you, neither of these 3 which have been shortlisted have any experience to
Past
manufacture
experience.
a
Yes.
sophisticated aircraft parts and equipment like a 5th generation. So this, I will feel, the design of ADA, which it is supposed to cooperate, we will have to invest heavily. Either the government does or the company does. It's a joint holding, JV. I'm not sure what comes out.
Okay.
But the manufacturing and the assembly has to come a very big way into this thing. So at
And
this stage
timelines
now,
have to be maintained and respected. Quality control has to be ensured.
Yes,
But,
yes.
Sandeep, once the contracts are put in place and executed, India would be operating close to 176 Rafales in all. India will have the largest Rafale fleet globally. Now, does this scale, Sandeep, create one, strategic leverage with France, or is there a fear it'll increase dependence on France, a single original equipment manufacturer, or going by past track record? And especially given the relationship between India and France, given the track record that even after the Pokhran test, they did not stop supplies, France remains a reliable partner.
Absolutely, Gaurav. As you mentioned, after Pokhran, after India became a nuclear weapons state, there have been only two countries that we have imported fighter jets from, Russia and France. And this relationship is only going to continue with the Rafale. And as Air Marshal Kapoor mentioned, that they would set up an MRO here. And there is a very large client base in and around Asia. It's quite possible that Dassault will service their aircraft here in India rather than fly them back to France. Because the Rafale is one of the biggest success stories of French aviation in recent years. It's one of the most successful fighter jet programs in the recent decades. It's beaten out several Western American aircraft, particularly in head-on competitions. And it's an aircraft that, particularly now with the way geopolitics is shaping up, people who want to move away from American aircraft, fighter jets, reduce their dependence on American aircraft. The Rafale is the aircraft of choice, Gaurav.
Okay. In fact, Colonel Shukla, that's a very interesting point. Given that Vice Chief of Air Staff also said Rafale is definitely the buzzword, do you see this DSC clearance effectively shut the door to any serious consideration, maybe on future consideration for an F-35 or a newer generation of Eurofighter or the Gripen, or is the window still open for a fifth generation aircraft cooperation with others also?
Well, I think one of the biggest pluses of the Rafale is that it is here. It's here and now. It's something that the aircraft has in its fleet, can put pilots into and fly missions as deemed necessary by the government. So that is, it's something that we have not had for quite some years. A sort of state-of-the-art aircraft that is ready for operations right now. And to that extent, the Rafale is a wonderful story. But at the same time, there's on the sliding scale of efficiency, we have aircraft that are already ready for being retired into obsolescence. The Jaguar is one that comes straight to mind. So I think that all in all, we've got a sort of a range of aircraft now. The Air Force, when it's asked to fly a mission, will no longer be sort of looking at each other and saying, what's the aircraft I'm going to fly this mission with? So I think that to that extent, there's a sort of positive buzz about the Air Force now. And they just need to make sure that they translate it into buzz from the HAL and L&T, as you said.
Yes, and the other private manufacturers that will be coming in. Because Air Marshal Kapoor, we saw during Operation Sindoor, whether it was the Su-30 MKIs with the BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles or the Rafales, in your appreciation, is the Air Force now absolutely on the right track? Or are there apprehensions that we are now getting caught in this big debate, security now versus long-term self-reliance? Because of this falling squadron strength, the self-reliance story may perhaps take a backseat, or that is not the case. There's an entire aviation ecosystem that's gradually coming along.
If you see last 3 years, what all is happening? We have started manufacturing C295 in India.
Yes.
Have you seen the flyaway? Only 16 aircrafts come and 40. The first one is expected to fly by September this year. Made in. From 30% indigenous component for C295, it has gone up to 70%. It will go in a couple of years. The ecosystem coming around the aviation manufacturing companies is out of this world. I speak to a large number of people. More and more young boys and girls today are joining the startups which are, and I'm personally aware of large number of people who are migrating back from the West, that is US and Europe, back to India because they want to contribute amongst other factors. So there is a time now that the government should formulate a policy of reverse brain drain, and this is what China did. I was speaking to
Yes.
General Raj Shukla the other day. When the
Yes.
Chinese decided to change the gear, they adapted the same policy. They got the people of their origin back with healthy stops. Let our government take the lead. The professionals in each aviation vertical and the other niche technologies, be it artificial intelligence, machine learning, space, cyber, get them back. And around them, take the private industry as well as the brains, the IIT, the Indian Institute of Science, the national technical institutions, and create an R&D setup which the projects are now integrated with the armed forces. These young boys and girls should be forming a part of the squadron or any operational unit to understand after due clearances, and then they go back on the drawing board, and this healthy interaction has to continue if we have to become a global power as far as the defense aircraft manufacturing
And
goes.
to an extent, Sandeep, we are already seeing this happen. We're seeing this happen with drones. We're seeing this happen in the artificial intelligence. There's so much of it that's also happening. So it's unfair right now to look at this self-reliance in defense versus security, offsets, local assemblies. All of it is happening simultaneously. Is it, Sandeep?
Absolutely, Gaurav. And what Air Marshal Kapoor mentioned, the fact that the services must drive innovation and indigenization. You have the spectacular example of the nuclear submarine project, where from 1998 to 2026, you have 4 nuclear submarines, ballistic missile submarines, the most complex piece of nuclear military technology. You have them in the water. That is a project that is driven by the Indian Navy. It's got the Department of Atomic Energy in it and the DRDO. So the service, the user service has been driving this project. Similarly, the Air Force must drive these projects as well, Gaurav. And all of this, that ecosystem that you're going to create is going to have to come from an all-of-nation approach and not by working in silos where you have ADA blaming HAL and HAL blaming the Air Force and all three, pointing fingers at each other. We need integrated
Contribute together,
system. Yes.
everyone, the whole of the nation approach. I want to thank all my guests for joining me on this very interesting debate. Yes, there are naysayers, but then there are also those who say this is the right way to move about it. On pricing, we'll talk about that in days and weeks to come.